Do you think that has any use? To first to have the reflection about a methodology, and then if it's useful in the scenarios you are familiar with.
Yeah, sure. I mean, of course, it's not this process. It's not enough documented. I think so. Then it cannot be enough debated, or people cannot really consider what's best, or what are different ways to do exactly this kind of work. So, of course, you need first to document what people do in what circumstances and with what sort of differences. This is the first step, actually, that I think is very useful.
So, I'm sure you've reflected about your own experiences. Which are the biggest lessons about, in terms of process in cross-border investigations?
You need to talk and meet on a regular basis. I think that's the most important thing. But this kind of lesson, it doesn't come from investigative journalism per se. It's coming from any work, collaborative work, that especially collaborative work that it's done um, remotely from different places. So it's not in the same workplace where people meet on a daily basis. Having said that, in a newsroom, even in a newsroom where people are meeting on a daily basis, there are formal, regular meetings as well. So it's the newsroom conference every morning, and then there are for different people in different hierarchies. There are different meetings. So I think this is the way to organize investigative journalism projects, like you would organize other projects.
So, the respect of the diversity and agreeing on a common ground is a bit of a challenge, but I don't know if you faced any of those situations.
The different cultural and political backgrounds have different sort of influence on the story, on the research process. Yes, and I think there are a lot of examples, but I think the most sort of the example that comes a lot in discussions between Eastern Europe and Western Europe, or Eastern Europe and the US, is the use of incognito or hidden reporting. And this I've seen coming back over and over. It's just one example. Yes, there are others, as you said. If you go further in other countries, the way reporters expect for officials to behave. So let's say there are lower expectations in new democracies compared to what the reporters expect in Western in the Western world. Also, from a media to another, different media have different expectations. If you're talking about Spiegel in Germany, well, they expect people to react and to react fast. If you talk about a small NGO that has a website, then they don't have these expectations, and they do different, but they do different stuff. They are differently pushy, or they organize their research differently in order to get the results.
Now I'm thinking about the relation with the truth. Do you have more? Have you had any more philosophical, discussions about what the truth is?
I think when we are in a process of when we are in a cross-border project, we are in a process of gathering information first, and then we are in a process of interpreting, arranging, processing, analyzing that information. Yes, the ultimate goal is the truth, but it's never a sort of topic of debate
Yeah.
during the process or explicit discussion.
Yeah. When I went to South America last year, one of a very experienced journalist said something that I had to consider when discussing a methodology was what he calls the framework of suspicion. And he says Anglo-Saxon or more Western media has the cut is more what's legal and illegal. However, in other kind of democracies where you have, all the line of the journalism of outrage and more like an activism, you have more what it's ethical and not ethical, and that's apart from the legal and not legal, right? Because sometimes the systems, there are many things that are not ethical and illegal, and the conversation there sometimes is difficult. Has that happened to you, or have you reflected on that?
I think so. I don't think so. I don't think so. The article. No. I mean, I can think of. I mean, look at the discussions in the presidential race now in the U.S. around the candidates. Look, I mean, this is not investigative journalism, yeah, but it's journalism. And look at the journalists in the U.S. And the discussions around Donald Trump. They discuss his ethics as a businessman.
Yes.
They don't discuss necessarily his legal steps in his business process. So they are analyzing his different decisions in business and the ethics of that. So I do understand that in some parts of the world, the decision on whether this is a topic to investigate or not is different. But I don't think it's going. I didn't see it this way.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. I didn't see it in the way of we should only report on illegal stuff, or we shouldn't report on unethical stuff, because in my world, Eastern Europe, a lot of the stuff that's happening is actually the other way around. It's a possible conflict of interest. It's a possible ethical, moral issue, and maybe the legislation is not actually showing that to be illegal, but we still go after that and question the different links between officials, unofficials, families, business, political career, and so on. I would say that I was surprised to hear about journalists in Eastern Europe that don't take a story, they don't want to investigate necessarily a story because it doesn't hit a target of millions of dollars in corruption, or like it's not a big story if it doesn't if it doesn't bring up for discussion a big sum of money, and they would not go after a story that would involve people being killed or having dead people and a lot of victims, because they would say, well, but this is not that big for us. What's big for us? It's big corruption and big names in politics. And I'm thinking specifically former Soviet Union countries where journalists are sort of totally after big names, and like you want to expose Putin, and you want to show his bank account, secret bank account, or this kind of stuff, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter for a newspaper that much that there are examples around the country and around former Soviet Union where negligence or corruption took the life of 5, 6, 20 people. This is the sign of society being sort of flooded by these kind of examples. So there are no news anymore. Maybe it's a problem of the journalists. I don't know. But this is the type of discussions I heard when talking about whether this is a story or not.
You are doing your PhD about transnational investigative journalism as well. So what are you doing your research about?
Well, I'm trying to see if um, if network topology can be used in investigative journalism across borders. And for that, I need to see what does it mean, first of all, to have a network, and second, to see if existing operations that are described as being networks or networked investigative projects are really are real networks, or if they are just different type of organizations with different with a different name. Sorry, if they are sort of all type of organizations with a different name. So basically, I want to look around and see how investigative journalism come to this discussion of using networks, organizing networks. For what are these networks used? Like, it could be producing journalism, or it could be sharing information and conferencing. And then I want to see, I want to analyze these existing organizations, projects, and so on, and see how they are really structured, how they really work. Because what I see so far is that we talk about an intention, but we cannot see this is what's going on here. It's not real networking. What I'm seeing, both in terms of the Global Conference for Investigative Journalism and in terms of let's say ICAJ projects, this or smaller networks, we are seeing basically a group of people over centralized in terms of decision, organization, workflow, resource sharing, and so on, and publication. So this is under no circumstances what we would call collective um, action or a collective group.
Well, so you're thinking of a more kind of horizontal and structure, right?
Well, yeah, networks, in my understandings, are distributed and not centralized. If you start to look around, you see the same people traveling from a conference to another or endorsing each other on different email groups, Facebook, whatever. So yes, it's kind of very few people if you think that these people should represent the global phenomenon of investigative journalism, right? I mean, we are talking about maybe 50 names, maybe 100, but not really,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And this is really few. The names that you see most of the time coming back, and like the names that you see all the time being associated with investigative journalism
yes.
across border. These are like less than 50. Well, it's also an issue of access in terms of language, of course, because the chosen language is English, but also in terms of resources, and that's part of my research as well, to see what's the extra pressure that configures these constructions. And I find that the extra pressure with most influence over what's going on is from donors, big donor organization like be it the Open Society or State Department or these kind of organizations. But it's not in terms of these organizations putting pressure on the journalists, but the journalists themselves are part of this NGO movement, trying to, I don't know, either make a living or following the rules of the game. So basically being interested in I don't know how to put it, interested in satisfying the requests of such donors, and then going after solutions that are not necessarily bringing or growing a network, but are fine with the narrative and financial reports that such organization require. So you rather want to have a perfect conference where you can say 1,000 people attended and to be like very well organized, instead of playing and experimenting with people that are not certified show people when they present their work, or having to deal with tougher personalities, but good professionals, and being inclusive in this way of having um, different characters and different backgrounds around the table without necessarily everybody agreeing with each other.
Yes, you're talking about the management of the business, kind of investigative
Yeah.
journalism.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically what I'm after, and then I'm not sure I can say at the end of the research this is a model or that it's a good model or that it's a bad model, whatever. But I want to see at least to be able to describe what's going on and where does this all come from and where does it go, which direction. And I find, unfortunately, that this approach of non-profit investigative journalism and networks was a sort of reaction to the lack of this kind of work in mainstream media. But it is sort of turning in a wrong direction. So the reason to start all this for me and for others that I know of was that you need independency, you need to have no pressure whatsoever or no possible influence from anybody when you do your investigative work, and you need resources to do that. Now what I'm seeing is these organizations look even worse than what it was. What it was
Yeah.
that we run from. Basically, that the big problem was the lack of separation between the economic decisions that a company media took and the editorial decisions, right? But there you had more people and you had still some sort of separations, some sort of mechanism. Now with this non-profit world, you have basically in most of the organizations, you have the same people who are applying for money and who are asking donors to give them money. But yeah, it's there are a lot of other reasons. But I think the end result is this, that you have a much weaker actually configuration right now.
What about universities? What about going back to universities as a place where to do investigative journalism?
I don't know about that. I mean, yes, you end up with the same problem. Some universities do have budgets for this, some don't, and they cannot cover, they cannot replace the missing uh, information needs from other places or communities where you don't have universities at all. So maybe you have one place in a country or two or three, but that doesn't really cover for what you actually
Of
need.
course.
So it's a problem also that the people, I mean, you should find a way to have the people who need it to pay for it. Yes, to have some sort of free information around, but for the detailed information or for information that is, or for the source documents or whatever, to have people paying for that, you can't. So to have people directly pay for what you produce, what you put out there, instead of having others to pay, and have this split between who pays for your work and who benefits from your work. This networks uses big names and buzzwords and so on, also because of the relationship to donors. But what you have in reality, in for instance, most of the data journalism, it's not really data journalism. It's just click and search in different data sets, and maybe some sort of more knowledge in organizing Excel tables. So this is what secretary would do 20 years ago in a big corporation or organizing information. It's not something that only journalists do and only a type of special journalists do. And I think this is why people don't want to go too much into the details of the methodology to maintain a sort of mysticism about how hard it is. But I also think that it should be sort of documented, research published in more language with examples and so on, so that you have newcomers into this, and this such newcomers are actually also sort of protection for the people who are doing this kind of jobs in dangerous places, because the more you have, the less pressure is on the few who are doing it.
Of course.
Yeah.
And something else that journalists from the south, right, was saying about, well, their concern was, if you're doing cross-border journalism and you have a common funding, how is this going to be organized if the budget comes from outside? They say, well, if the methodology somehow gives some kind of guarantees that it's going to be a bit more transparent and more democratic, not only the management of the resources but also the decision making, then they were a bit, happier with the methodology, because it could have another purpose apart from just as follow some steps.
Of course, it's but it's still, if you have these basics covered, you have something. Because in projects like ICRJI, for instance, there is not even these basics it's covered, right? So you don't have, and for different reasons. I mean, I'm not saying here there's only like bad intentions or anything, right?
Yeah.
It's the fact that you as a journalist are producing stuff that is gonna piss really important or powerful people, so you become liable. So these people could go against the organization that has more of the assets, so they wouldn't go against the freelancer from Romania. But if that freelancer works with ICIJ from Washington, of course they would go after ICIJ in Washington. Yeah. So there are reasons for that, to have an editorial check and a fact checker and a lawyer and legal screening and so on, and the decision there. But the system for these projects is like this. It is centralized and it is closed. It's not inviting everybody in the network, not even everybody in the network. So, and there is no technical mechanism to get other people participating and decide in the same way. But this is the old model of newsrooms, where you have the privilege of decision, but also the responsibility. So it's not, it's a double sword. I think what we're trying to do with this network in Europe, and I think also it's you can't start, so you have to test it in smaller groups before you can scale. And it doesn't necessarily need to scale. So you don't need to have a network that is covering the whole world, right? You can have a model of small networks, more networks around the same country or whatever. You don't need to cover the entire planet, really, with the same network or with the same technology and the same mechanisms and methodology. Maybe that's even something that doesn't function, simply. It cannot function. So what we tried with this European network is to have a smaller group. The one we just started, to have a smaller group and to have these kind of mechanisms in place if people want to use them. So, meaning have access to management system, information management system, where everybody can put stuff, add stuff, comment stuff, to be part of the editorial process from the beginning, and in the end, everybody decides on his own product and publishes in his own media, in his own language, and using one common brand. But there is no centralized decision maker who says we will use this article, we will use this package, and everybody should translate that. And also the decision most important and most conflictual is related to deadline for publication. This is always hard when you have more partners involved, because one has print weekly, one has a daily, one has an online behind a paywall, and one has an online with no paywall, whatever. So there are different motives where people want to control this publication. And usually how I've seen it working with other groups is that the biggest wins, because everybody wants to have the biggest media partner publishing. They don't want to piss him off.
Yeah.
Well, what I'm trying to do here with this group is to have to accept that there is always an initiator of a story, of a investigation, and that there is another sort of follower of that person or that media group, and to have these initiators decide together with the coordinator, which is me in this case, decide on the publication date. So if the initiator is a smaller actor in the network, still that initiator will have the sort of first word on when to publish, and the others would have to deal with that.
Okay. So you're appealing at a more democratic, if you want, representative way of managing it.
It's not more democratic. It's not democratic. It's but it's shifting the coordination role from one partner to another. So it gives you the possibility to come with a story and then also lead the research plan and also lead the publication date. So instead of full democratic would be we vote, yeah? But it's not a vote here. It's the person who started this research and who do the initial work will have the same on a publication.
Yes, I totally understand. I just wanted to make it more, maybe more equally opportunities to everyone who is involved based on merit, not based on the size or the power.
Yeah.
So when you say that you have this, you have a kind of a specific process of how you work in this European organization.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something that is a public document, or is something is informal? How is it something that I could read or not yet?
Not yet. I don't know what I put online because I can't remember exactly. So there is a bit of description on how how we are working and what we are focusing on. And how is the decision process and so on. And also there are some description on technologies we want to use, and I think that's important because that's the technology. It's important in terms of free software versus proprietary software. Free software means anybody in the network can take that piece of tool and reuse it, even if they are going away from the network. So it means that if you are with a proprietary tool, you can use that as long as you're a member, and then that's it, you're out. With a free software tool, you can reinstall that and use it further. So that's something crucial, I think. The tools that you're generating or that you're using as a network to manage the information, to process, analyze, to do all these steps. If you have access to such tools only when you're permitted to be part of a network, then you will behave differently. You don't want to offend the network or whatever. Maybe you make compromises, but you don't really participate in the network. you are there only to use these tools. You don't really participate. You don't bring stuff to the network. Whereas when you know that you have the freedom to, take these tools and be able to use such tools, even if you're not part of that network anymore, I think you discuss differently, and you are more engaged with the group. So this is described on the website, and the hints to free software and the tools we are trying to experiment with. What is not described is the workflow of the network and the workflow of each project. But this is because this was what we published was a test project, and we still refine our workflow. So it's a document, it's a work in progress. But it's sort of going around this idea of having each time for each project someone who's proposing the story with a bit of documentation, and someone who's accepting it, and then the others decide if they are part of it or not, or if they wait for another project.
How do you see the role of the coordinator?
Well, the coordinator should be sort of a facilitator, not the director. The coordinator is more of a buffer between various interests and egos, and should balance the network, I think. Yeah, that's how I see it. It's my role now, and I sort of designed my role, myself designed my role, but I was doing this having in mind all this research I'm doing for my PhD and all these different critiques I have for other initiatives. If that will work, I don't know. There is a tendency in everybody to take over. So, and there is a tendency in groups to split over control. So I think my idea for this, the coordinator should have a role of rebalancing this tendency everybody has to take over. Mm-hmm. So in other words, don't put too much power in no one's hands.
Have you come across the discussion about trust in not only other media or other journalists? When it's about Crossborder, journalists says, well, I would only work with people that I've met before, or that I know, or what they've done, or or I have a personal reference. I says, well, but it's not always going to work like that, because that would limit us to always with the same circle of people. So how do we expand this net if that's going to be a condition? If it's somebody, I'm very interested in Africa, for example, the chances of me getting into what's happening in Eritrea, that it's so hermetic. If I have a journalist there, what I'm going to, the trust, building the trust is just such a challenge. So how do you see that?
That's obviously the big discussion when something starts. So it's who you know and who you trust and who you worked with before, and then that this sort of trusted group at the beginning establishes a circle of trust, and then they recommend others. Basically, each in the group would say, hey, I know another person wherever we need another person, and the others will accept it just because they accept the first one, the introducer, right? Mm-hmm. And so the trust is expanded to someone else.
Like the concept of time is so different, mm-hmm. And there's some cultures who do not understand what a deadline is.
I see this unresponsiveness. It's the biggest issue with such collaborations, and I'm trying to deal with this in different ways. I don't think there is an answer to that. But again, the answer is not there is not one simple answer to that. I mean, again, this is the type of approach that is not necessarily related to investigative journalism. Yeah. The way you make people collaborate from different places, and the way you deal with unresponsiveness and so on. I think it's the same in other teams that do stuff together. One thing is if you pay people, or one thing is the one important thing is people in this project in the project are paid or not, by who, like how much or how little. Um, then there is a lot of um, maybe it's important to the management style in terms of like what is the coordinating asking and when and how fast. If it's asking too much for like all of a sudden, or small tasks that go to bigger tasks and so on. And also communication. That's the biggest thing. How often do you communicate? I think this solves actually most of the different cultural working problems with different groups. Mm,
Yeah.
and also, even the expectations are also important. If people expect that everybody will participate with the same amount of time, information, and impact, it's a nonsense. It cannot be like this. It's not. This is not a process to build laptops. I don't know. It's not a. It's not something that you know before you start. That what parts will be produced by whom. So sometimes you will have people who will not participate in the meetings but will provide good documents, or sometimes you have people who participate in meetings but they don't bring anything, but they are sort of following the rules that don't bring something of content or meaningful content. So, but and then this is what it is. I mean, you can't even think about the bigger projects that ICRJI was doing lately. Like in our offshore leagues, there were all in all maybe 100 something people. How can you possibly uh, digest relevant information coming from 100 people if all the 100 people will send you relevant information? Let's say like a network, the network would really function perfect, and everybody would bring perfect stuff, new stuff, and their view or whatever. How can you possibly, as a centralized manager of this, can you ingest all these sources um, and synthesize everything and put it at use? You can't, right? I don't think you can.
Yeah, I understand. The last question: do you have, as part of your workflow, um, conflict of interest disclosure, or that's implied that people would say if they had any conflict of interest?
Sort of expected from people if they do have a conflict
They would
to,
come and say it without being asked.
yeah, to tell you about it.
Yeah.
But it's been the case with networks like for ICIJ, for instance, where it's the biggest network sort of building in the years. I know of members in Eastern Europe who become officially involved with the secret services in their countries, like spokesperson or whatever, and they didn't tell the network about that, and they hope that nobody will know, and members in other countries realized that and alerted Washington about it, and they were taken out from the membership list.
Of course.
But before, that was a slow process. In the meantime, these guys were still using their branding as part of this journalism network, and I don't know of any like concrete example, if they misused their position like this or not. But you would expect someone to tell you, I switched to the other side, take me out from your website, or not to get involved in a project. But this is like any ethical discussion in journalism. Of course, it's good to have rules and regulation guidelines and discuss possible examples so that others think about it. But in the end, it's the ethical lines are with everybody, with each different person. It's with yourself, because you can follow the guidelines and still organize pretty nasty conflicts of interest. Actually, need in this field is for people to stay as critical as they are as journalists with themselves and with what's going on around. There's no problem that there is criticism. Shouldn't be a problem that there is criticism and debate. I think should be a problem when you realize that there is no criticism and no debate, and people are like in a church. Everybody agrees and chanting. So I see this sort of happening, especially in the last years. Well, good luck, and let's keep in touch. Yeah.
Yes, and let me know when you have, when you advance with yours.
Yeah, I will. I need to do it really fast now. Anyway,
Okay.
we'll see.
Good luck.
Okay, thanks. Good
Thank
luck
you.
to you as well.
Bye.
Cheers.